a quick overview of the Modern Language Association's 8th edition. Well, one should consider all 9 elements of a citation when evaluating a source, regardless of what that source is, whether it's a tweet or a video or a newspaper article or a book or an ebook or an academic journal article, whatever. These are the 9 elements. We should consider all 9 elements. Some of those elements may not exist, but this will create a complete citation. So the first one is author, and the author, as it always has been, is last name first and first name last. If you have a second author, the second author will be first name first and last name last. If you have 3 or more authors, you will only include one and then comma et al. It's important to note that an organization can be an author, so in this case, the Central Intelligence Agency is the author of the World Factbook. The next part of your, or element of your citation, is the title. And the thing to note here is that you can have the part of a source, in which case it is in quotation marks, so an article in a newspaper would be in quotation marks, or a a chapter in a book or a page on a website would also be in quotation marks. If you are citing the entire source, not a part of the source, then you would include the entire name and put it in italics and omit the quotation marks. The container can feel a little bit tricky. A good example of a container would be a website name as opposed to a web page name. YouTube could be a container. A database name could be a container. The name of a publication, a periodical like a newspaper or a website. So the container would be in italics. And you can also have multiple containers. So that is where it gets a little bit tricky. So in this instance, where we have the swearing in of the Secretary of Transportation, that is in the White House's YouTube channel, and then you complete that whole citation. So you go through elements 3 all the way through 9 for that first container, and then you can list the second container, which in this case is YouTube. Other contributors, most students will run into editors, and that's probably where you'll see this most often. You don't always have another contributor. Take a look around, see if you see one. If you don't, move on. The version is also similar to that. So you could have a single versus a radio edit for a song, the software version, a movie version. That would probably, but you won't run into that very often with this in citing sources. So it's probably one that you'll look around, see if there's a version. If there isn't, you move on. The number is more common. It particularly is common when you're looking at academic journals where you have a volume number, or even more commonly, you'll have a volume number and you'll have an issue number. The publisher is important, and there are some exceptions where you actually don't include the publisher at all. Magazines and newspapers, one does not include a publisher. There are containers. It's really, this is where the distinction between a container and a publisher is very important. So for example, YouTube is a container. It is not a publisher. They don't have editorial control over the content that they have out there. They can pull stuff down, okay, but that's pretty much it. They don't actually create the content. Most of our databases are not publishers. They are containers. The exception to that is ABC Clio. They publish the content within their databases, so back before there was, people had the internet at home, much less in their pocket, ABC Clio published books, and that is the content that they have now digitized and turned into a database. So that's the only exception out of all our databases. Well, there are probably a couple more, but mostly it's ABC Clio. The website publishers are really important. They should not be omitted. whenever possible. The only time that you really leave it off is if the website name is the same as the publisher name. Another time where you would probably drop off information because there is redundancy is if the author of the website is the same as the publisher of the website. You leave out the author and you include the publisher. So you would start your citation with the title of the source. The date. Here's our recommendation is if you can't find the date, don't use the source. There are exceptions. Well, the most important exception is the federal government. The United States tends not to have a copyright date on most of its websites. I'm not sure why that is. We've written to the Library of Congress about it, and we still are waiting to hear back from them. If you really, really, really are certain that the source is valid and valuable, but there's no date, you should include the date of access after the URL. So in this example, you have the whole citation, and at the very end, after the URL, you have the words accessed 8 February 2017. The location is either the page number or the URL. When you are including the URL, make sure you leave off the http:// In a lot of cases, you're going to leave off the www. Wherever possible, use permalinks, and the next couple of slides will show you what that is. So databases, some databases provide a permalink. Most online newspapers and magazines offer a permalink, and we'll show you the examples of that. So here's an example of the New York Times that if you click on share, you'll have a permalink there, and that will make sure that whoever is looking at your resource can actually get back to that source. The databases often offer a permalink. There's a link for that. So you can click on it and copy the permalink and use that instead. A couple of other things, do not include abbreviations. National Public Radio is not, you would say instead of NPR, National Public Radio, BBC is British Broadcasting Corporation, CNN is Cable News Network, and so forth and so on. Definitely think for yourself. This is an example of history.com, and they tell you how to cite their source. We do not want you to include history.com staff. They're giving you information, but you have to create your own citation. So we've given some indications here. This is a commonly cited source, so we wanted to make sure that publisher is Arts and Entertainment Network, not A&E Networks. So you want to make sure that you spell things out. So what information the sources give you on how to cite stuff may be incorrect or need modification. Here is what they give you from ABC Clio. You do not need to put that date accessed at the end. It's not really wrong, but you do not need to include that. Same with ProQuest. They included the http:// you would omit that. This is a Gale citation. They give you the date accessed at the end. We would omit that. And an EBSCO citation is so wrong, I can't even explain everything that's wrong about it. Just know that they're wrong. That's, for one thing, that's MLA 7. It's not MLA 8. So they're way, way, way behind in terms of updating that kind of citation. Also, their number is wrong. They've left off the volume and the issue number, and 195 refers to the page, but it doesn't include the full page range. A lot of problems with this one. Date of access. This is a little bit tricky because I've mentioned it before. The Modern Language Association Handbook says it can be important when using web sources, but it's not required. But it is required, and we really insist. If there is no date of publication, you'd better include it. So that pretty much wraps up this mini lesson. We do have lots of student examples that you can refer to. They're on the annex, they're on the slideshow, the one that's in slide form. They're in a document that we've created of an exemplar, again, that is listed on the annex. So we have many additional materials beyond just this. I hope it was helpful, and good luck.